Hello, everybody. Welcome to Be a Better Game Master, podcast number 2. It's been a while since I've made one of these. My name is Barker. Thanks for coming to my YouTube channel. You can also go to beabettergamemaster.com. If you want to see some supplements that I've released or worked on, you can go to absolutetabletop.com if you're interested in that sort of thing. If not, no worries. But usually we'll have something free up there for you to go and grab, so check it out at least. This is podcast number 2. I really enjoyed making podcast number 1. It happened a while ago, but now I'm finding that from when working from home, I have a little more time on my hands during my quote unquote lunch break, which I take in the living room, go on my personal lunch. I walk 2 rooms away and take my lunch. To really pick up this handheld recorder and just talk about gaming. And I've been thinking a lot about this subject, today's subject, for a while. I've been listening to a lot of TED Talks on storytelling. I really recommend you do the same after this podcast. Go to any TED Talk on storytelling and just listen to it. I listen to a lot of TED Talks, a lot of audiobooks, a lot of podcasts in the background while I'm like cleaning my house. Excuse me. Oh, no. Sniffing in the podcast. Faux pas. I listen to a lot of podcasts and stuff while cleaning, while working. And so I highly recommend you do the same. Just the little things, the little gems you'll pick up will often inspire like total campaigns, But this specific subject popped out of one of the TED Talks, and I can't remember which one it was. But basically, it was talking about limitation, limiting yourself. And, the last podcast I did was called Creativity. So it's so ironic that now I'm talking about limiting yourself, right? The last one was about, do whatever you want, man, as long as it's fun, do it. And now I'm saying, wait, build a few fences. But limiting yourself and creativity, let me rephrase this, limiting yourself might be the best way to be creative. and I'm gonna give you an example that this person gave, where if you take 2 people and let's say they're not artists, right? But you sit them down and you say, hey, you 2 both need to draw a tree. But then you select one of those people and you say, but you draw the tree only using triangles, right? The shape of a triangle, right? Using that shape to construct this tree. That's a limitation, right? You both need to draw a tree, but you're limited. You can only do it using the shape of triangles. And what's interesting is that the person who's drawing the tree using only triangles will number one finish that tree first, more often than not. But second, it will very likely be a more creative tree. It might even be a better tree than the other person who just has to create nothing, or create something out of nothing, rather. And that way of limiting yourself, I think, is super helpful. Being able to give yourself some parameters to work in will get you started. At least for me, I found that this is gonna. I mean, it's changed my whole workflow. Because when I used to start prepping for a game, I would open up a Google Doc and I'd sit down and I would find myself staring at a blank sheet of paper, and that is the biggest obstacle ever, because you start thinking creatively and then you start thinking, oh my gosh, I could put anything on the sheet of paper. Oh, I don't want to put the wrong thing. So you don't put anything. And I'm sure a lot of the people listening, especially those who have tried to write novels or short stories, things like that, have encountered a similar obstacle to that one. So let's practice limiting ourselves when it comes to making a game session, creating a campaign, creating a single encounter. And this is super helpful to me because in a specific way, being that I tend to have too many ideas, and I think they're all awesome. They're just like, oh my God, I can't wait to show my players this. Oh, this too. And then I find myself having to tie them together plot-wise, like, well, how are they related? And then I shove it all on my players at once. If you watched season 1 of the Winds of Cersaline game on my channel, you'll pretty much find out that I kind of do this between, episodes 4 and 5. It's just like all of a sudden there's just tons of stuff happening. And it's like, it could have easily gone the route of like a TV show like Lost, where many, many questions are being raised, but not very many are being answered. And so I took session 6 and 7 and was like, these are question answering episodes. So that's how I changed it. I changed the format in the middle of the series, the season, right? In order to fix a problem that I saw was occurring. Because I do that all the time. I just like, oh my God, this idea of, today someone came up with an idea of the halflings in my world living in cliff dwellings like the Anasazi. Brandon in my Trenches of Hallowhall game that I'm coming up with, he came up with this idea, and I'm like, oh my God, that's so cool. And if this happened 2 months ago, I might have been like, hey, Winds of Cersaline, you hear that halflings live in cliff dwellings. I can't speak today. But that's not necessarily necessary for the story for them. It's not something they need to hear. But I thought it was so cool that I want to give it to my players right now. And a reason that that's bad is that these ideas, they're very awesome to us, right? As creators, we think they're super awesome, but they come to us slowly. They don't come to us right away. It takes a little bit of brainstorming, a little bit of, thinking on this subject, listening to the right music before something, boom, pops into our head. And then it's like a seed, and it grows and grows and grows, and you're like, oh my God, that's awesome. And that's how it becomes awesome, slowly. Slowly growing. But we want to give it to our players now, right? We want to take the whole package and we want to throw it at them. And they're not going to appreciate it as much because they didn't have the time to see the foreshadowing or to see the growth. So that's a way that, limiting ourselves, not bombarding our players with ideas can be a good thing. So I've been thinking about like how do I limit myself when I'm prepping for a game? And I'm currently working on the Trenches of Hallowhall one-shot that I'm planning on November 7th on my channel. You might be able to see the video on there now, this little live stream just sitting there waiting. But I've been thinking about it, because there's a lot of things I want to convey in that game. First of all, Enkea, my homebrew world, it's a battlefield. I mean, I love the idea of having a war world where it's just war. But simultaneously, you can still do your regular D&D adventures, but the entire background, the environment is just a war-shaped place. And I've just always loved the idea of that. And so with this Trenches of Hallowhall one-shot, this is basically the first game that I'm running online, ever, that's really going to showcase that aspect of the world, which is a huge aspect of the world. It basically defines the world. In the Winds of Cersaline game, you've really only seen one small part of the world, and it's a very isolated part. So now I'm kind of moving around a little bit. But how do I go about showing such a big thing in a one-shot, right? Well, first of all, the one-shot is a battle. The Trenches of Hallowhall. It's basically the Battle of Hallowhall, trench warfare in a fantasy setting. Just magical explosions, just magic everywhere. Don't peek your head out of the trench, that sort of thing. Really, really based on World War One, excuse me, for obvious reasons. The entire world is actually inspired by that. I love studying that war. I think I've mentioned the Hardcore History podcast in the past. Again and again and again, I recommend you go listen to it. But how do I limit myself? Because I have so many ideas for the world and the war. And now I have 4 players that are giving me these awesome character backstories. And it's coming to a point where I'm thinking, this is a one-shot. I have 4 hours to convey some level of character backstory for each character, all 4 characters. I have to build the setting, show people what's going on. I have to create, this is a battle, so there's going to be, at least 2 combat encounters. I have to create a goal for these players to achieve. These characters are not related to either or loyal to either side of the battle, really. We're just caught in it. So it's like, I've got to, include that, all without really railroading the players. Now, it's a one-shot game, as in it's a campaign, or not a campaign. It's a storyline. It's an entire story arc in one session. So I have to do that. But I only have 4 hours to do it. And I slowly kind of realized that. And I knew it before. I don't know if you've ever felt this way, but something, you just don't realize it until it hits you over the head. And you're like, well, gosh. But that kind of happened. So how do I do that? How do I incorporate all of these ideas into 4 hours without drowning my players in lore, without drowning my players in too much information of any kind? And the answer that I'm coming up with is I'm limiting myself, okay? Basically, I took this whole idea of this battle, which is just pages long, and I told myself, Barker, you get 1 sentence. You have to describe the battle in 1 sentence, and you only get 1 comma. Like, you cannot run on this freaking sentence. And that was the most, it was almost liberating. At first it seemed daunting, but when I realized what that sentence was, which is a very basic, fundamental overview, like if the battle were a footnote in history, what would that footnote say? And I wish I had it in front of me, but it was something along the lines of, while maneuvering troops through Hallowhall, the dwarven city of Hallowhall, the mountain dwarves betrayed the elves that were maneuvering through, and the battle for Hallowhall began, something like that. And that actually wasn't it, but it's like this single sentence that it just liberated me, because then I saw this sentence and I said, that's all I need to convey. That's really it. And I did the same thing with the world. Okay, if I could convey this world in a single sentence, what would it be? And they're like, that's difficult, because I'm like, there are 4 main aspects of this world that are important to convey. Okay, we got an ancient civilization, okay, that is gone. It's been completely buried, literally under the ground. Okay, that's 1. The second thing is, the reason that that civilization was buried is because the tectonic movement in this world is insane. And this event I haven't named, made it so that these land masses were moving like water. And they just basically rolled over the ancient civilization, again, literally burying it underground. So that's the second thing. There's a lot of tectonics in this world, a lot of tectonic activity, excuse me. The third thing is this war, okay, that's full, like completely encompassing the entire continent, very few neutral parties. That's very World War I like. And the fourth thing is this idea that magic is just now becoming a big thing. Like, it's always been a low magic setting to the point where, magic is probably mythological to a lot of the common people in small, like more rural areas. But now it's like everywhere. It's turning into a high fantasy setting. And I have to take these four things and encompass them in one sentence. But then I'm thinking, well, do I need to include them inside this one shot? And the answer was no, not really. I don't have to. But I would like to include the war thing or the magic thing, one of those two, because, a lot of magic's being used in this battle. But ultimately, you're hearing me ramble. But that's what I did, is I narrowed these things down into one sentence. And then I took that one sentence, okay, and I told myself, okay, you need to make your one shot, the entire one shot, in a paragraph. And so basically the same strategy, where I take that one shot idea, I write a paragraph of whatever, 5 sentences, 6 sentences, a paragraph about what's going to happen in this one shot. And then I need to break that paragraph up into pieces, into encounters, right? And I need to decide where the things I want to convey are going to go in the one shot. And you got to make these things tangible. And here's what I mean, okay, before I get too ahead of myself. I want to convey the idea that war is terrible, that this conflict is just living hell. And so I've decided that in the opening scene, okay, one of the characters, I don't know, is probably going to be sitting in this muddy trench, staring at their cup of coffee, with this iron mug of coffee. And near them is a body that's probably been there for 3 days, and the flies have gotten to it. And one of the flies is going to take off from that body and land temporarily in the cup of coffee. And then it's, going to fly away, or maybe the character will dump out the coffee, and then the fly will drown on the ground in the coffee, or whatever. But that's all I'm going to give it. War is hell. This entire idea that this whole battle is terrible, I'm going to give it one scene. And maybe occasional descriptions throughout, the one shot, but that one scene, that's the bulk of it. And it's got to happen right at the beginning, because I want the players to feel it, not the characters. I want the players to feel it. Oh my gosh, this sucks. This place is awful. And I'm going to do that for everything. So magical firepower, right? Tons of magic flying over the trenches. I'm going to give that a scene. Maybe even a combat encounter. I'm going to give the technology that's beginning to be used, not like actual technology, but magically created technology. Like, what I mean by that is, I have some things in this world that are going to be steam powered, but it's not like actual steam. Okay, they're steam powered in this way. Like, you take water and then you take a fire elemental, okay, and you put it in with the water in some contraption, and the fire elemental heats up the steam. So it's like a fantasy version of steam technology. And I'm going to give that a scene. A combat encounter, maybe, when these characters are going to have to fight against these steam-powered things, I'm going to create, take all of these massive, huge ideas about the world, about the battle, about the enemy, and I'm going to give them specific moments to shine. And that's all I think I'm going to do to prep. I'm gonna draw up a couple encounters, things like that. But outside of that, I think that's enough for me as the GM. I think after I give basically all of these 5 encounters, or beats, as I like to call them, the rhythmic beats along the story's path. These events that occur, I'm going to take these ideas that I want to convey, and I'm going to give them places, specific places where I'm going to show them off, and that's it. I'm not going to constantly be battering war is hell into my players' heads, because that'll get exhausting. And I'm not going to constantly be saying, oh, look at this. Oh, no, now look at this. Now look at this. Because then eventually I'm going to be doing what I'm doing right now, talking constantly. And my players will be sitting there listening. And there's a time and place for that. And it's not throughout the entire one-shot. You lay out the foundation. You decide when these things are going to shine. And you give the rest to your players. At the very least, that's going to be my mentality in running this game. So, next time you are sitting down to prepare for a game, I want you to give yourself different types of limitations. Okay, I talked about one already, like the sentence limitation. I want you to write out the entire campaign in a sentence that you can save and constantly refer back to make sure you're still on the right track. I want you to write out an entire character's storyline in a sentence. If you, like an NPC maybe. Always knowing that, if your players do something that alter the storyline or delete it completely, you can go back and change it, which you should do, right? Be a reactive GM, reacting to the character's decisions in the game. And then realizing that, your story should evolve, but this sentence will give you a mentality to keep in the meantime, right? You know that this person is greedy, right? This NPC, Khan Bardes, he's greedy. He wants, he wants money. He wants this Maricor, this city that he's running, he wants it to shine. But what if the players, in the middle of it, persuade him not to do that? Well, then I'm going to change the sentence to Khan Bardes is generous. I mean, this is a huge, 180, obviously. It might change a little bit more subtly than that. But let's say it did change to this NPC went from greedy to generous. Well, they have a bunch of money, so maybe they're going to donate all their money, or a whole bunch of it. And so now I have that new mentality, that new sentence in my head to help keep me on the right track. So limiting yourself in terms of words on the page. Also, next time you go and you're trying to figure out what kind of character I'm going to play in my next game, pick 3 races and pick 3 classes, assuming you're playing D&D. If you're playing any other system, you can just narrow it down in a way that system allows. But kind of keep it simple so that you start flooding your brain with lots of ideas about a few things instead of lots of ideas about many things. Because that's just a good way to go nowhere, right? So that's a good way to do it as a player, I think. Another great limitation is, and I think this might be the last one I talk about because I can't really think of others, but I'm sure you can, but is the time limitation. I have an hour to prep this session. 1 hour, okay? That means that you're setting a timer for 1 hour, and you're putting it in a place where you can see it. And you've told your family, you've told your friends, hey, I can't be disturbed for an hour. This is my thing. This is it. You're not checking your Facebook. You're sitting wherever you want to sit comfortably with all your prep materials, and you are preparing for this game for 1 hour. And that's all you get. And you get it in your head that that's all you get. And let me tell you what, that page is going to be so full in an hour. So full. So long as you're sticking to that hour, and after this hour's done, that's it. That's all you got to run with. It'll really help you make decisions like, what's the most important thing in this session I'm preparing for? Okay, encounters. So that's what I'm going to do first. Boom. Get all the encounters done. Well, that was 30 minutes. Okay, well, what's the next important thing? Well, I think the opening scene, right? Okay, boom, opening scene. I'll type that up and improvise the rest of it. That's 15 minutes. I have 15 minutes left. I'll write the previously document to remind the players what happened last session. Okay, that took 8 minutes, right? So you have like 7 more minutes, I think, if I'm doing my math right. What do you want to do for that last 7 minutes? I'll come up with a cool quote for one of the NPCs to say. In an hour, you really just prep for an entire session that will still allow you to pave the way for improvisation and reaction to character decisions. All in all, what could very well be a very fun game. Maybe even one of your better games. So practice drawing that tree with triangles. Because, again, you'll get it done faster. And it could be one of the best trees you've ever drawn, ever. And other people will agree. Let me know in the comments what you think about limiting yourself. Let me know things that you've done to help limit yourself. I named like 3 different techniques. There's, I'm sure, dozens out there, so throw them out, Discuss with some of the other people in the comments. I love it when people enable replies to their comments because it creates this discussion. Be nice to each other. This is a very subjective hobby. There are going to be a lot of opinions, and that's the point of it. So, again, thank you very much for listening to podcast number 2. Excuse me. I hope to have podcast number 3 up relatively, maybe not relatively soon, but more soon than 2.5 months. Again, my name is Barker. Be a Better Game Master and AbsoluteTabletop.com if you're interested. Otherwise, I just want to thank every single one of you for listening, and I'll catch you next time.